Lord, make me a means of your peace.
Hello and welcome to Catholics Today. I'm Blue Rolfes, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Lafayette. Thanks for being with us today. We are very excited to welcome two outstanding young men to our program today. They are brand new transitional deacons here in the Diocese of Lafayette, Deacon John Joseph, CJC, and Deacon Andrew Killeen. Thanks to you both for being here today. We'd like to spend the next half hour or so getting to know you guys a little bit better and find out about your journey to the priesthood and about your discernment process and just a little bit about your lives so far. So Deacon John Joseph, let's start with you. The basic information: where are you from? What's your home parish? And when do you remember first hearing the call to the priesthood?
So thank you for having us, by the way. We appreciate it. So I grew up in Lafayette. My whole family's from Kaplan, but I grew up in Lafayette, went to St. Thomas More. Actually, we both did. And my home parish was Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist. And I would say, as far as first hearing the call, it was probably, I'm sure there was some inclinations, but it wasn't really until about halfway through my senior year where it was like, I think God is really actually calling me, and then I have to take it seriously.
His voice was getting louder and louder in your
I
ear,
guess so.
at that point. And Deacon Andrew, how about you? Where are you from? What's your home parish? And when did you first notice that you were being called to the priesthood?
So I'm from Lafayette, and my home parish is St. Pius X. And it depends on who you ask. So my parents would say around second grade, but I would say around the sixth grade when I started altar serving.
And that probably gave you a chance to really see the role that the priest plays in the Mass and in the life of the parish.
I remember
well.
looking at the priest and saying, I could do that.
Yep. And that's something that we've heard from a lot of transitional deacons and new priests, that they've looked at their pastors or the parochial vicars or their shepherds of their communities and said, I think I'd like to be that guy. I'd like to do that. Well, let's move on to our next question, and Deacon Andrew, we'll start with you on this one. Where are you attending seminary? And tell us a little bit about the academic curriculum that you'll be experiencing in your final year of preparation for the priesthood.
So I'm at Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans, and the final year, there's some courses on theology, but the bulk of it will be practicing the Mass, and then practicing like a funeral Mass or a wedding Mass, and then practicing hearing fake confessions, so to speak, and then spiritual direction. And
as lay Catholics, that's something that we really don't think about. I think we all think that all of you are just sort of born with all that in you. Somehow the Holy Spirit just gives you all those gifts, of being able to administer the sacraments, and we forget there's a lot of hard work involved. And many years of study. So definitely. Now, Brother John Joseph, how about you? Where are you attending seminary? I assume it's also at Notre Dame.
Yes, ma'am.
And what are some of the courses that you're most looking forward to taking this year?
One of the courses that I just find really interesting is we'll be taking a course on wisdom literature, and so the Psalms and then wisdom, Sirach, and those kinds of things. And so it really gives an opportunity for us to really develop a real living relationship with the Word of God. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to really delve into that.
It's so interesting. We think of seminary as sort of like an extended college experience, but it's so much more than that. It's you take academic courses, but then there's so much theology that you have to go through. It's amazing, and I'm so glad that it's you guys that are most definitely. Now, as you enter your final year of seminary, what are some of the other steps that you'll take as you prepare to become a priest? And Deacon John Joseph, of course, you'll be entering the community of Jesus crucified, so your experience may vary a little bit from Deacon Andrew, who of course will be a diocesan priest, but what are some of the other steps in addition to your academic preparation that you'll take in your final year?
Right, so right now we're in our Deacon Internship, and so basically what we're doing is just kind of getting in touch with a lot of just a very practical things, like I had to prepare a couple who has a baby for baptism, and for their child's baptism, and then I came into conflict with, okay, well, one of the sponsors wasn't confirmed, so could that sponsor be a godparent, or helping people go and visiting the sick, and someone was dying and they opted out of giving them a feeding tube, and trying to wonder if that was morally permissible and those kinds of things. So we get kind of put in those situations, and so it's very helpful. Like, for one thing, we have the academics, but then when it comes into contact with real concrete situations and you have to work through all those things, it's very helpful to have our deacon internship to do that.
Most definitely, yeah, because you can't learn that in a classroom, can you?
Right,
It's
yeah.
definitely on-the-job training,
Yeah, exactly.
so
That's
to
right.
speak. And Deacon Andrew, what about you? What are some of the experiences that you will have outside of the classroom as you prepare?
So I'd say, again, for that deacon internship, just the liturgical life, living the liturgical life, and just the rule of life that we set up, because now that we're deacons, so there's some difference than it was before, but just setting that up in the parish, but also, again, making those sick calls, bringing communion, opening the church if we have to, setting up for Mass, and just things like that, and getting into the normal routine of things
It's a lot to
difficult sometimes, but it's
Sure.
good.
Sure. And I think it's, once again, from a lay perspective, we know that as transitional deacons and later as priests, you will administer the sacraments and celebrate the Mass, but I mean, it's a 24/7 job, and
Right.
there's so many different aspects of it involved. It's a lot to learn, definitely. Now, Deacon Andrew, will you have opportunity to spend time in a parish in addition to your responsibilities or your schoolwork at Notre Dame?
Yes, ma'am. So I am at actually St. Peter's in New Iberia with Father William Blanda. We've started, full throttle in meetings and parish life and activities and dinners with altar servers, planning outings and things like that. It's wonderful. I love it.
And he's such a great teacher, I would think, also as well. And he's a vicar, a dean as well. So I'm sure he'd be able to pass along some administrative experience to you as well. It's been compared, being a pastor has been compared in various times of being the mayor of a small city or the CEO of a relatively large corporation. So it takes a lot of skills, I know, definitely. Now, of course, Deacon John Joseph, you will be entering a community, an order, so to speak, Community of Jesus Crucified. Will you have any opportunity to spend any time in a parish in addition to the time that you spend at CJC?
Yes, ma'am. So St. Martin de Tours has opened its doors to me because it's just a couple blocks away from the community grounds and campus. So that gives me an opportunity. I'll be able to preach in the parish setting. I'll be able to do baptisms and those sorts of things. But also while also maintaining my community life and being able to participate in the stuff that the community does in St. Martinville, like the soup kitchen and our youth center, and then also helping out with what we have is called the Aquinas Institute, helping out with college courses and those kinds of things to increase the formation, the theological formation of our Catholics here in Acadiana. So.
I've always wanted to take a course with Aquinas Institute because the titles of the courses sound so fascinating. I don't know how all of you find time to do all of that in addition to your work with the poor and vulnerable. It's kind of like being a parish priest. I always wondered when you have a chance to sleep because you're always, someone always is in need of you. Now, this is probably going to seem, after almost 7 years of seminary, is probably going to seem like a stupid question, but there are a lot of us as lay Catholics who aren't exactly clear what a transitional deacon is. Can you explain what your definition of a transitional deacon would be?
Right, so the word deacon comes from the word to mean servant. So, or minister, but minister meaning like many, not the person who's supposed to serve the needs. And so obviously we are a member of the hierarchy now. We're really ordained. There's we call it an ontological change or an indelible mark that our souls get marked with, that we're going to be deacons forever. But it's also, because we're transitional, it's also in preparation to become priests. So it's in view of becoming priests. And so our diaconate makes us servants in preparation for the servants that will have to be as priests.
Now, can you explain the difference, Deacon Andrew, between a permanent deacon and a transitional deacon? I think there are a lot of lay Catholics who aren't clear on the distinction.
Sure. So there's the difference between a transitional deacon is, as Brother said, that they're on their way to the priesthood, and then the permanent deacon is one who is ordained permanently, right, to the diaconate. Oftentimes they have families, they're married, they may even have like another job outside of their parish ministry.
Okay. Now, let's return to your early years. We talked a little bit about where you were from and your home parish who sponsored you, but tell us a little bit about what role your family played in your discernment. Were they supportive? Did you feel from an early age that your family was behind your decision?
Oh yeah, from a very early age, they were always extremely supportive. In the beginning, we were good Catholics, so we would go to Mass on Sundays every now and then Easter and Christmas. But as we continued to learn about our faith and grow in our faith, we really dived on in, and then just watching my parents interact. We went to mission trips in Mexico, and watching them lead that, was just added more fuel to my faith and really set it alive.
It's good to hear. And Deacon John Joseph, what about you? Was your family instrumental in helping you make the decision?
Certainly. I mean, I think when I originally made the decision, there was a lot of hesitancy because they weren't sure why, and just with different things that they were confused about, just weren't sure what the priesthood really mean and why I would want to do that originally. But they definitely now. They're absolutely my biggest advocates. I know that for a fact. And there was certainly things, I reflect on a lot of little things, that my parents did, when my mom would pray these novenas or something like that, or my dad. I remember my dad telling me when I was a little bitty that, like, he said, if you're ever lonely, just tell Jesus you love him. And, when you, just those little things like that, you really believe it, and you really, and then next thing you know, he became the center of my life, So certainly my parents were instrumental in my discernment.
Definitely good to hear. Now, Deacon John Joseph, as we mentioned before, you are a member of the Community of Jesus Crucified, and next year you'll join Father Champagne as a co-shepherd, so to speak, of that community. I don't know if he will give you that status right off the bat, but you will be. Now, what factors shaped your decision to join the community? How did you first become aware of the community and its particular mission in the Diocese of Lafayette and in our faith community, and why did you make the decision to join them?
Sure. So when I was originally in diocesan seminary, and I from the beginning of my discernment, the main motivation behind it was I really wanted to emulate St. Joseph. I was very attracted and drawn to him as a model of fatherhood and masculinity. And so, so that I knew that my purity or celibacy was a big part of that, but I also knew that poverty was going to be a big part of that too. And so I was very interested in, what could I do to live that way of life that was, poor, chaste, and obedient. And after looking at a number of different communities, there was just something. There was the way I imagine it is like, when a man meets a woman that he falls in love with, and he realizes all the quirks and all the good and all the bad. This is the person I'm supposed to love. Yeah. And that's how I kind of fell in love with the community when I came in contact. There was something in me that just kind of harmonized with the community. So
I can definitely understand that. Yeah. And Father Champagne is a persuasive person as well. I remember when I first had the opportunity to work with him for Fête du Teche. I don't think anybody has ever said no to Father Champagne when he's invited them on a spiritual journey. When he's asked them to help the poor or to just to further the mission of the community. So I can certainly understand that. Now, Deacon Andrew, why did you choose to become a diocesan priest, what factors shaped that decision for you to decide to become the leader of a particular parish?
Right. So just, I guess, growing up in St. Pius X and watching my pastor, Monsignor Mouton, he was a diocesan priest, and wanting to be like him and the other pastors who I knew. And I think from the beginning, I kind of just had the small scope of Lafayette, the city of Lafayette as a diocese, and of course, throughout my years in seminary, that's grown to the entire diocese, and just an ardent a zeal and a desire to serve the people of the diocese where I grew up in, where my faith was fostered.
We also spoke earlier this week with the 3 deacons who, as you're watching this, will have just been ordained priests. And Deacon Donald Bernard also cited Monsignor Mouton. He's a fellow parishioner at St. Pius X. And it would be interesting to sit down and figure out how many vocations Monsignor Mouton might have helped start on the road to the priesthood. He was definitely a leader and someone that we will always definitely miss. Now, as you enter the final year of preparation for the priesthood, what have the past 6 years been like for you? And I'm interested to find out, is preparing for the priesthood the experience that you anticipated that it would be, or did seminary turn out to be something maybe a little bit different than you were expecting?
Yes and no. So growing up, I always kind of knew that I wanted to enter seminary, become a priest. So I would go on come and sees. I went on a lot during my time. So I kind of had a vague idea as to how seminary worked, what it meant. But then when I entered, some things was the same, but I guess just being there in seminary was very different from going to visit it. And studying philosophy for 4 years at St. Ben's in Covington, and just dealing with that, the joys of philosophy. And then, of course, now studying theology, learning the truths of the church is just a beautiful thing.
Okay. And Deacon John Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, so I'd say it was much. I didn't go on as many come and sees as Deacon Andrew, but yeah, it was definitely there's something different. There's a change when you make a decision, and when you're kind of committing yourself to something. And so I think when I made the decision, and then I realized, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what, and so the process is just kind of natural that follows it. But I think one of the things that has been most, all I've been, is a seminarian. And so I realize now that this is just beginning, it's a lifelong service, and this was just the initiation of that, the inauguration of that. So it's as much as, I've enjoyed my seminary time, and there's its own challenges and struggles and everything like that. I realize, no, I'm just getting started.
And you probably have that feeling at various times during your priesthood over the next 40 or so years, most definitely. Yeah. Deacon Andrew, one thing that I think that a lot of people would be interested to know more about is the seminary process. A lot of you have followed the same path. You started at St. Ben's, and then you go on to Notre Dame Seminary. Can you tell us what the difference is in terms of the academic approaches of each one of the seminaries, and how they differ or overlap, or how if they supplement each other?
Yeah. So at St. Ben's, for the first 4 years, either 4 years or 2 years, you study philosophy, and that's the first step. And then you can say when you finish there, you move into theology, or major seminary. And I'm at Notre Dame, so that's where we are studying theology. You kind of need the groundwork of philosophy to help understand, comprehend, and know the theology, because they go hand in hand.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit can you expand a little bit on philosophy? Because those of us who had a lay experience in college think of Socrates and, the great philosophers of earlier times, but I'm sure from a Catholic Church perspective, the word philosophy has a very different meaning. Can you tell us a little bit about that academic course?
I would say as they say, it's that we do study Socrates, we do Aristotle, Plato, all the heavy hitters of ancient philosophy, but then we study early ancient philosophy all the way to postmodern philosophy. We study all of it, Catholic, non-Catholic. We want a groundwork because so much of the philosophical thought has influenced the way in which we see the world, the way in which we view the church, view Christ, and view our theology. And it's shaped so much of what we believe and how we live and how we act.
That's so interesting. Okay. And Deacon John Joseph, can you expand on that, add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, philosophy really, it shapes you how you think. So like, I remember asking my parents, especially after I graduated from St. Ben's, that because, I did pretty well in school and high school and stuff, but I said, like, I think totally different now. And it's not, and I said, like, I just retain information differently because of the groundwork that he's talking about of philosophy. And I asked my parents, and they said, oh, yeah, we definitely can see how that's different, and it's true. It's just, it just gives you a way to talk about things that you never thought about talking about them in that way. And so it's definitely essential. And then theology is just, it's such a sigh of relief when you get to talk about stuff you actually care about. Because even though there's a groundwork that has to be laid, theology is really what we're meant for. So,
So philosophy is boot camp?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think I finally understand.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, what advice would you have for each of you have for other young men who may be just starting out on the path to discernment, or maybe trying to hear if that's God that's calling in the background, or if they just think that it's God calling in the background? Deacon Andrew, let's start with you. What advice would you have for other young men who are just starting this process that you're now nearing the end of?
Yeah, I would say listen to that voice, just follow it, and keep on praying, and find a good spiritual director, a priest who you trust, who you know, who lives his life as a good, holy priest, and cling to that.
Okay. And Deacon John Joseph, what about you? Any advice?
Right, yeah, sure. I would say, it's so essential to cultivate trust, because whenever we're faced with something that might seem like it's against my desires, like for instance, like, the desire to get married, or the desire, like I always wanted to be a heart surgeon growing up, and that desire, it doesn't really, those things don't really go away. But I remember when I found out that, that the Eucharist is the heart of Jesus, and that the one heart that I always wanted to hold was his, that I saw that like none of my desires are not going to be, are going to be eliminated by God, but they're just going to be brought to a higher or more beautiful level. So I think that, just for any young men who are discerning, just to not be afraid, to realize that God absolutely wants what's best for you, and the only way you can discover that is through prayer.
Definitely. And listen to that voice.
Right.
Definitely.
Yes, exactly.
Deacon Andrew, a little earlier you had mentioned the come and see retreats, and for those of us here who are associated with the diocese, we're really familiar with what a great opportunity that is for young men to find out more about the priesthood. Can you tell us a little bit about the come and see retreats and what they're all about, and maybe what you got out of them when you attended them when you were starting out?
So just, I think, going and seeing the seminary, one, you see that they're real people at seminary. You kind of just think of them as this pious, hands always folded, always praying all the time. They do that, don't worry, but there's more of a realistic, they're human, they're people, they're close to my age, they're young men striving to be holy, and in that they're discerning the priesthood. And then also one of the come and sees occurs during Palm Sunday. So the Palm Sunday liturgy at the Abbey was just absolutely beautiful. They do that, the procession from Christ Court to the Abbey Church with the palms and the singing. It was just something I never really experienced in high school and all, and that was just a beautiful thing.
And did you ever attend, Deacon John Joseph, one of the come and sees, or was there something else that maybe you were able to participate in that helped draw you further into discernment?
Right, yes ma'am. So yes, I did. There was what was called a Come Follow Me, which is kind of in conjunction with the Lake Charles and Baton Rouge dioceses, and they all come together. That was the first thing I did, and then I also did the Palm Sunday one, which is certainly, it's a huge help to kind of put some skin on what you're kind of imagining this place might be like, and certainly to encounter other guys. it was shocking to realize, wow, there's other guys like me. I'm not
That's gotta be
the
a good
crazy one.
feeling.
Yeah. So it was definitely, and just to see guys who really actually want holiness and want to discover what God wants for their lives. That was really edifying. So.
One of the things that we're really proud of here at the diocese is the jewel, the treasure that we have named Father Kevin Bordelon, who of course is our Director of Vocations. What role has Father Bordelon played in helping you discern the call to the priesthood?
So Father Bordelon, he was actually, I was one of the first people he accepted. I don't remember who he accepted exactly. And I'm going to be the last one of that group to be ordained, or I was the last one to be ordained a deacon and then ordained a priest. And so I've had Father Bordelon, and I've seen, I think, like I remember one time he said, man, you've grown up. and I could say the same about him in the same role. Not that he's actually grown up, but that I've seen like his wisdom in vocational discernment. And he was just such a, when I come a little crazy about things, you get your head spinning over a few things. He was just able to just kind of calm me down and just give me really good advice. And so I've always appreciated him. And I had the blessing of being with him at Cathedral for a summer, and so we were able to grow pretty close. So yeah, definitely Father Bordelon is instrumental in all our vocations, but particularly in mine as well. So. And
what about you, Deacon Andrew? What role has Father Bordelon played in your life?
Oh yeah, he's been very important because ever since I first entered seminary, he's always been there, through the good, through the bad. He's always there to listen. He's always there to take a phone call or a text. It's just been it's great. Really helpful.
I've had the opportunity to speak with several transitional deacons and priests who, right after their ordinations in those respective categories, that they said that their heart stops just for a moment during the Mass when Bishop says, "Do you deem these young men worthy of ordination?" And there's that second that Father Bordelon pauses before he answers and says, "Yes, I give you the go-ahead to ordain these men." And I've always thought that was so funny that I think he extends that moment, just to keep you guys on your toes. Now, most definitely. Now, I'm interested to ask you, what do you think will be the most rewarding part about being a priest?
I think seeing any soul, transformed by grace.
Absolutely.
And knowing that you were able to participate in that in any kind of way.
Absolutely.
As weak as I am, and so certainly being able to, that God allows me to be a part of that.
And Deacon Andrew.
So I would say just celebrating the Mass. You say the Eucharist is the source and summit of our Christian faith, and just saying those words at consecration, but not just staying there, but distributing it, giving our Lord to the people, bringing our Lord to the sick, to those in the hospital, those in nursing homes, those who are homebound, and saving souls.
And that's a beautiful moment to wrap things up. We thank you both for being with us, and best of luck. We'll be praying for you in your final year, and we look forward to your ordination next year. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much.
And thanks for joining us for Catholics Today. I'm Blue Rothfuss. We'll see you next time.